everyone? Tom Vann again. Good to see you. May have been a while. Have we not seen each other in a while? Well, let's get going anyway, because what this is part of a 3-part series that I'm sending out to you over the next 3 days, so we can start fine-tuning some of that stuff that I think may have been lost. Boy, I've been talking to a lot of people now. You know, the amount of VSMers worldwide has surpassed 19,000 people now in 97 countries. Which is pretty cool because there's only 195 countries in the world, you know. So we've well surpassed the halfway point on countries. But most importantly, what I hear from quite a few people is that they're struggling with certain pieces of the selling methodology, or they've taken the selling methodology that is VSM and they've kind of created a hybrid version because I don't know, maybe they got pressure from the managers or the dealer or somebody's telling them not to do it and they're confused and all that stuff that happens to you. So I want to make sure you get back on track so you can start selling more deals, because if you're missing these incredibly important pieces of a transaction, you're losing deals that you can't afford to lose. I'm telling you, if right now let's say you're doing about 12, 15 cars a month, which is nowhere near enough. If you just sold 3 more vehicles and you're already selling 12, that's a 25% increase in your income. 3 deals. And I'm telling you, over, say, a 4.5 week period inside of a month, I promise you, you've lost 3 deals that you shouldn't have lost because you're missing pieces inside the selling methodology. So, let's just start. This particular video is about the missing sales piece, which I'm just going to call the missing piece. All right? All right, so first, I want to do a quick run on what VSM is once again. All right, because this is where we go. We start in discovery, right? And let me get this out of the way. All right, so when we're in discovery, what are we doing? Right? We're discovering the 2 major problems that exist when the client walks in. That's what we do. Client comes in the dealership, or they call, or we call them. It's all the same thing. We want to figure out 2 major problems. Number 1, the problem with their current vehicle, right? That's number 1. And second, the problem that they've had with their current shopping experiences. All right, we have to find out those 2 things so we know what not to do, and we'll also know exactly what type of solution we need to deliver. All right, that really starts us out in making certain we deliver the right solution for people. We don't just follow them, okay? So that's what we do during discovery. And discovery is broken down into some pieces, but that's the crux of discovery, right? Now, how we do discovery and how we interact with the client allows us to do what? Get ourselves involved in this thing we call the trust factor between ourselves and the client. All right, now what that does, that allows the client to believe and be vulnerable with us and open themselves up to us, and we do the same with them. All right, once we do that, then we can move on into our presentation. Now, again, the presentation isn't about presenting the car, it's presenting our package of extraordinary benefits. Right, that package that makes us unique over all the other people that they've shopped or that they will shop. All right, now this whole thing, even on the phone or whether it's face-to-face on the phone, this takes just a moment. All right, you can even do it in email. It takes just a moment to do it. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds at the most. That's all you need. And this is incredibly powerful. And then once we hit presentation, then we move into the works. Now, if you remember the works breaks down the guts of this, right? Why do they need the type of vehicle that they need? All the stuff they want and all that, we're not that interested. We're interested in what they need, features-wise, vehicle-wise, size-wise, fuel mileage-wise, all that stuff, right? So we get to that, and then, of course, we get to the trade. If they do have a trade at that point, then we get into the financials of it, how their credit is, how much money they're setting aside for the new vehicle. Do you remember this? All right, you should, because this stuff is incredibly important. That gets through the works, and then we go through the finish, which is we recap all that we found out about the client, and then we go through all the steps in order to select the right vehicle, show them the vehicle, present the vehicle, rate the vehicle, and then ultimately get the final, yes, I'll buy it routine. Okay? All right, so that's the essence of VSM. All right, now, a lot of people, let me tell you where they start going wrong. First off, they start going wrong at the very first part of this whole thing, which is in discovery. Because once you get in discovery, what ends up happening here, by the way, I know plenty of times they call it introduction, but I didn't want to get through all the pieces of saying hello to people today. So we're just going to call it discovery. Inside discovery, when we're finding these problems, the number one thing, number one problem that salespeople get themselves involved in is setting up a Q&A session with the client so that they can all of a sudden gather the information in the shortest period of time. And that is not what we're doing here. Right? This isn't like we shine the light on them, interrogate them, so we get all the information and get right to it as quick as we can, because it's up to the client. The client very likely doesn't want to follow your pace. They want you to follow their pace. And we'll gladly do it as long as we're managing the conversation, right? So when we enter discovery, we have to enter discovery understanding in our heads that we have to hear what story this client has to tell. And you have to, when you enter a conversation on the phone or face-to-face, you have to have that thought and that belief in your head is that I want to pull the story about what's going on. And a lot of times what I'll say to people and what I teach people all the time is say, geez, Jim, interesting. It sounds like you got a story to tell. Really, what's going on? And once you do that, you know, it sounds like you got a story to tell. What's going on? What's going on with that Taurus? Or what's going on in your life? Or why is it that you need so much more space? What's the story here? Because there's something interesting brewing I could tell. When you engage people like that and you say, I'm interested in your story, that's when they start giving it back to you. And then you've got to care about the story. Right? What I see a lot of salespeople do, and I hear a lot of salespeople do, is they'll go, okay, Bill, so what kind of car do you have? So what's wrong with that? Why are you trading it in? All right, okay, and do you plan on trading that in the next week or so, or what's going on? All those are, well, what we call interrogatory questions, right? They're interrogation-style techniques, which is very impersonal, and the client doesn't want any part of being impersonal unless they are ruling the show. They're going, no, I don't want to shop with you. No, stay away. I don't need you right now. That type of stuff. Engage the client so you build the trust factor. Without the trust factor, you're smoked. All right? So when we talk about the missing piece, the number one missing piece is the trust factor. Trust hasn't been built between you and the client because you don't know how to be real with them, right? And I'll tell you that here's what happened to me just 3 days ago. This is the one that I don't know I'm reminded of right away. I usually work with referrals, so it's all easy. But I worked a brand new client. They come driving through the thing, and no one was around. I went out and I checked it out and got my hand in the air, right? You don't wave, you hand all the way up in the air, and they'll stop every time. All right. So I walk over to this guy's truck. He's in a pickup truck, a Chevy pickup truck. He says, you don't have to come out here. And you go, and I said, I know, I don't need to. I said, but you stopped and you're looking around for something. What is it? I saw you kind of eyeballing that Equinox over there. What's up? And he goes, just kind of looking around for something for my wife, something like that. You go, I get it. All right, and man, it's tough. All of a sudden, you're picking vehicles for your wife, man. I know how to. I've lived that story. You know, what's yours? You know, how'd you get hooked into doing this? And as soon as I said that, hooked into doing this, he goes, my wife, man, she's had the same car for 8 years. I went and bought this truck, and she's been bothering me. Well, just a couple days ago, her check engine light comes on the side of the road. She's got to limp it into work. And then she has to call the service station to have them repair it. And now she's just frustrated. She says, man, I want a new car. It doesn't have to be a brand new one, but I want a newer car. I deserve it. You just got a new truck, and I need one. I said, man, the ruler of the house spoke. You know? And I go, okay, I believe me, I understand that story too. Okay, so she must have mentioned the Equinox, otherwise you wouldn't have stopped here. I mean, really, that's okay. And it's okay. Equinox might be the wrong vehicle. Who knows? You know, I mean, there's plenty of good vehicles, and that might not be the right one, even though you're looking at it. So this is how I went into him. So what am I telling him? I understand where you are. I feel it. You got a good story. You tell it well. And the car I have that you're looking at, it might be the wrong car. So now I totally went opposite on this guy. Right? He's going, wow, this guy isn't pushing me or anything like that. And he goes, well, what do you know about these things? I said, well, let's discover it together. Come on out. Now I know a lot about him. I said, let's discover them together. So we start walking around it, and he's going, man. He said, these are pretty good looking cars. I said, yeah. I said, you know, the sister car, this is the GMC Terrain, and that's pretty good looking too. It feels a little more truckish because they wanted it to look that way, but the drive's the same. It's fantastic. So that might be something to look at too while you're going around. But the Equinox, this is kind of the hot vehicle. He said, yeah, I really like it. Anyway, to get the whole thing short, so on and so forth, the guy bought the car about 45 minutes later, right? And what was his first move? You don't even bother coming out. But what I did was I got him to share in a story that meant something to him, and he knew that I appreciated it, and then I never got salesy on him. Or I said, yeah, that might not be the right vehicle. Heck, what do we know? You know, we're a couple of dudes, you know. What do we know about buying cars for gals, you know? So they know, though, you know. And she said, to look at this thing, I could feel it. I could see it in your face. Yeah, well, you know, and so when we're doing that, all of a sudden it's a conversation between a couple of people. That's what people want. And when that happens, we now have the trust factor built, which then allows me to present and say, now, by the way, and once I feel that trust factor, I say, oh, by the way, Paul, I just want to let you know that this is how I do business. All right, it's that I like it all straightforward. I don't want you buying a car that's going to be the wrong car for you, because I'm going to be your enemy for the next 5 years. And what I need is to be your friend. Why? Because, well, ultimately, the most important thing that I could ever ask of you here is that if this goes well, and I think it might, but it might not, but if this goes really well, then I'm going to need to understand who you're in contact with so I can contact them. Why? Because, you know, the people that trust you kind of trust in your opinion, and if they're talking cars, I want them to at least be able to, you know, talk with me about it. Even if they don't buy from me, at least I can direct them to the right spot or the right dealership or whatever it is, so they know the right thing. So if this all goes well, I'm going to ask you for a couple of contacts to maybe write to or send an email to. I hope that's going to be fair. And what's he say? Yeah, that's fair. Great, because it's all about being straightforward, making sure you find the right vehicle that kind of fits into your finances too. Fair enough? Great. That's how I work. Does that sound like a way you'd like to work? Yeah, great. Boom, I'm done with the presentation. That's it. And now he's stoked, and I also prepared him for referrals down the road, and then boom, I get into the works, boom, get into the finish. All right, so the missing piece, a couple of missing pieces here, is really in the trust factor and how you get to it. You've got to find out what their story is, and you got to ask them, but you got to go up being non-salesy. You cannot go up interrogating people. Don't do it. Don't start asking all the self-serving questions. Ask the ones that matter to the client. That's why we ask, gee, so what are you driving now? Man, is this yours? It's a great looking car. Why in the heck would you want to, you know, get out of that thing? It's beautiful. You know, and so once you're there, people will start telling their story, and you go, wow, you've got a story to tell. I can feel it. Right at that moment, and when they start sharing, you are on your way to sales stardom. And I'm promising you, I promise you, you do that stuff with all of your clients, you'll find your 3 more. You might end up finding your 5 or 6 more that month, but I'm telling you, you will find your 3 more that you didn't find before. You might be blaming it on the client, or they didn't want to stop, or all that crap I hear all the time, because they end up stopping for me. You know, they stop for me, they buy for me. Why? Because there's trust built between us. You got it? So anyway, follow yourself through on exactly what you ought to do with VSM. If for some reason you're forced to get a little away from VSM because you got managers that are on your butt all the time or something like that, that doesn't mean you have to totally skip out on this. You don't, because this is all conversational stuff. If they start screwing you around in here, I can't help you unless you want me to call them, and I'd be glad to. I'll come into the dealership and I'll rearrange the whole dang thing so they're doing it right and the whole place sells more cars. But since you and I are talking right now, I'm not thinking that's probably where it's going to go. So right now, why don't we just focus on, you know, me and you? And that is discover the story of people. Then you can discover their problems. And when you are able to share those, they trust, they'll agree with your presentation, and then the rest is smooth sailing. All right, so there you go. This is Tom. Do not follow their solution. Don't follow the client's solution. Follow the client's problems that will lead you to helping them with the solution. You got it? I had to fill that in. People screw that up too. Anyway, this is Tom. Check in tomorrow. I got something incredibly important for you on referrals. How to get, and I said referrals there. How do you get a massive amount of referrals? And I mean between 30 and 100 every single month. And yeah, I'm talking to you, even though you might not sell a ton right now. You might be selling 6, 7, or 8, or 10, or 11, or 12, or 15, or 22, and still really not pulling great referrals. I am going to show you the easy way to get yourself to 30 to 100 referrals every single month. So tune into that. This is Tom Vann. Hey, look forward to seeing you soon. Adios.